Hello, people. Today we're gonna analyze Jean-Pierre Wehry's letter, courtesy of Joey Jeremiah, who has already done so much for the church, so many good interviews, the Vutoskins video and all that, the Ohio police interview. He's done so much for the church. I just want to address a quick topic. Someone wrote to me and said if I felt bad about being pushed a little bit to the side by new people. They're the new stars of the TCAPism pornography, however you want to call it. And the answer is no. I don't mind. You know, I was probably amongst the best in the church for a while. I'm not anymore, and that's perfectly fine with me. Things change, things evolve, and I have no problem with new people being more popular than me, much more popular than me right now. Getting my account deleted a few times did not help, but all in all, I want to say no. I don't have any problems with people doing all that. That's really cool. We got that. Dear Joseph, thank you for writing. And number one, yes, any help you and your students can give is appreciated. It's a weird letter. Number two, you have permission to obtain any material and or research on my behalf. Is that clear enough? If you don't know Jean-Pierre Wehry, you should. He's one of the most famous predator. He spins out that insane story. Some Mexicans on the bus. John, Scott, Joseph, whatever, Peterson for a job. I used to do photography for kindergarten cops. I don't know. I don't understand his story. It makes no sense. The first thing that shocked me, this is like 10 years later. When I read the letter, honestly, he hasn't changed much. He's still... I wouldn't call it chaos because chaos can be pretty, but I would say it screams of not delusion. How can I say? Extreme anxiety. I would say extreme, delusion that were created by anxiety. The way that it jumps from a subject to another and he's unable to follow a straight line with his stories. And that's something we saw in 2006 when he was busted. But even here, it's not well structured. There's like two exclamation mark, a semicolon. The number here is smaller. The A here is a capital A like here. Small a here, small a here. And the way there's the date at the top, this is probably out of habit that he wrote the date there. The way that he scribbles and he scratch over there, this is very clearly someone who's unable to function. I mean, to follow like a guideline. He's just not chaotic. He's not neurotic neither. He's just... Imagine that I took a knife and I cut like a third of your brain at random. And that's how it is. He's very confused. And I don't think he's acting. I don't think he was acting with Chris Henson. With Chris Henson, he was a bit more zesty. He was more quick to answer. Here, he can write, he can take his time, and despite that, it's still very messy the way he writes. Like, is that clear enough? It's out of place. You can see the tabs are not the same. The I... This is mental illness. When you look at that letter, he's not writing to a judge or a doctor to attempt to get freed. He's writing a letter to a fan, and it's still very messy, confused. You can see the lines are not straight. Despite that's a rule sheet. You know, that's a sheet like you have lines to write. And the way that he's writing a very like... I would say he probably had some difficulties learning how to write. Might be dyslexic. You can see that it was probably painful for him to learn how to write. Letters are very different, the way that he's going to write them. For example, the K. Here, if you compare the K a bit lower, it's not the same formation of K. So he doesn't write his letters. He's very like an automatic, a mechanic, the way he writes. This is a guy who probably today would definitely be diagnosed with probably not autism, probably dyslexia, but also he's a slow learner. He's someone that, and he's still a pretty intelligent guy, meaning that he's able to come up with that story with Chris, but he's not able to follow. He's like, he has his moments of lucidity, but here you don't see any. He's just, I think it's probably being incarcerated for 10 years. I look at that, and you know he's not going to get treatment in jail, even if it existed. This is a case, in my opinion, he should be euthanized. He's not human anymore. And I'm only like 5 lines in, so 6 lines in. But I look at that, and I see someone, he probably doesn't hear voices, but in his head, he builds scenarios that have nothing to do. That's how I want to say there's a massive, massive loss of contact with reality. He's no longer connected to reality. He's gone. Okay, his mind wavers. It's away. There's no lucidity. He lives in a world of his own. He's nuts. Okay, he's a nutcase. If he was outside, he would be going on conspiracy theory and all that. And I would say, looking at that, in my opinion, it's probably because of drugs. If I were to guess on Jean-Pierre Wehry, I would say he probably took some very strong drugs very early in his life, and it messed up his brain. Probably, yeah, I know one person that was smoking marijuana at 13, and that's arguably not a very strong drug, but it really messed his brain up, and he's a bit like that, not the pedophile part, but he's a bit like all over the place, unable to focus. At the very least, that's what I want to say. I'm not sure he has autism, Asperger, whatever, but he definitely has ADHD. Probably ADD, I would say. He's attention deficit, in this case, caused either by drug burning his brain or anxiety. And then you go, look, listen to the letter the way it goes. Like, number 1, yes, any help? Yes, you have my permission. Is that clear enough? I must back up a bit. The same person who wrote my writ is writing this letter. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? The same person who wrote my writ, you mean his writs of habeas corpus, which was when he tried to appeal his sentence and say he was innocent or whatever. But that's definitely him writing here. And that's what I mean here, slow learner. Signature is very beautiful. That's an autograph there. He's writing this letter. He means probably some kind of letter to appeal. When Joseph wrote, Jean-Pierre was appealing something, and Joseph wrote to him asking about the letter. He says, the same person who wrote my writ is writing this letter, but it's not clear. What letter? This one? I can tell you it's definitely his handwriting. This is Jean-Pierre Wehry writing. So he's talking about this letter, but not this one. A letter of appeal. And if you don't write this letter, you don't write which letter you're talking about. On an email, it might be okay, but mail, especially in jail, there's a couple weeks. So if you write the letter, you're like, what? If you write the letter, you get a reply a couple weeks later. You're like, what letter are you talking about? Then he says, because of my mental condition, he does sue at one point, and he kind of has a point there. He definitely doesn't receive his mental care in jail. But then again, he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, so why bother? Why bother helping him? He does talk about it. It's not very clear. There's like a meeting with the psychiatrist, and it's very weird. I did an analysis of it, never published it, but he's trying to fake some symptoms at one point, but he does have something, but he exaggerates, and it's very hard to distinguish what's real or not. This is a very messed up, he's a very fucked up person mentally. And I believe that at one point, fiction reached reality, meaning that when he arrived in jail, he probably decided to overplay his condition and act really crazy. He has done jail before, and that's the funniest aspect. When he talks with Chris Hansen during the sting operation where he got caught, he talks with Chris. He's able to pull not the most convincing story of all, but he's still able to pull something out, and he's able to make sense. Okay, I believe when he arrived in jail, the shock of being told, like, he was sentenced to 75 years in jail, he's like 50, so he's gonna die in jail. The shock of being told, it's a 3 strikes law, that was his 3rd conviction of a felony. So when he arrived in jail, he was gonna spend the rest of his life in jail. The shock probably killed what remained of lucidity in him. The sparkle in him died. Like, it probably was such a shock what happened to him. And after a couple of months of being in jail and being a pedophile in jail, and then you plead guilty, whatever. I think he went to trial, I'm not sure. Then you get 75 years. I think he just mental breakdown. And this is the result 10 years later after mental breakdown. Did you read here? Look at how when he's excited, he's gonna write bigger letter. That's like a kid. Okay, this is look like a kid, like a 6-year-old kid would write better than that. Like when he's excited, he writes bigger letter. Did you read my writ of habeas corpus? Why don't I finish? Some things are hard for me. Look at the capital S again. No dot, no end of sentence. I have autism spectrum disorder, Asperger's. No, he doesn't have Asperger's. I can tell you that. Well, he might have it, but that's the least of his illnesses. He has. I would say I can't come with a diagnosis with him. I never saw him, but he probably has. He's probably insane. Like there's no way you could. You could attempt to categorize like, oh, he suffers from paranoid delusions or whatever diagnosis, and there's probably a diagnosis. It would probably include the word schizoid or schizoid. With schizoid. It would probably include definitely what I call not venting, but you know, when you bloviate a lot, when you prattling about stuff. He's fixated on some elements and unable to stick away from them. Definitely a lot of anxiety. And he's probably burned his brain a little bit, so mentally he's not all there upstairs, you know. And he says, I believe the judge did not do his job by allowing me to be tried and convicted. That's 10 years later. And you believe that it's unfair, you know. I was tried and convicted. That's unfair. I was a victim. I'm the victim in that story. But then again, he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail. So what else can he do, you know? What else can you do except file stupid motions? If I was Jean-Pierre Wehry, it's hard to say because he's probably too far gone. But if I was, I would look at killing myself. Like, there's really no point continuing. You're in jail, you're a pedophile, and you're fucking batshit insane. There's nothing left for you in this world. Unless you escape and evade, which is not going to happen, given that he's an idiot. Unless you do that, you might as well die. I mean, there's really no point going on. Do you think NBC Universal knew this trap could snare someone with my disorder? So yeah, he invented that disorder and says that's why I got caught. That's the best excuse he could come up with in 10 years. Okay. And how do I sue them? Please contact me. He's still convinced. He still has hope, you know. He still believes that he lives in his own delusions, basically. Like, oh yeah, NBC, I'm a victim. I was abused. It's kind of sad to look at that. I mean, he's a pedophile. He would rape a kid, but this, to me, you could take this letter. I think this letter is worth preserving and studying. 10 years in jail, I repeat. And after 10 years in jail, you can see that he's not, how can I say? There's nothing like, he's not even human anymore as far as I'm concerned. His body might still function, but his mind is, he's not the same person, definitely. But I think that keeping this guy in jail right now is cruel punishment, violation of the 8th Amendment, or 9, I don't know. But then again, you cannot really free him because he's going to rape more kids. So I think at this point, I think in 1,000 years from now, we'll look at situation like this and we will use that kind of letter to justify euthanasia. And that could be a whole debate. What I would do for him, I would probably drug his food. Like, that's the cruel part about euthanasia. That's I can tell a story about a lady that I don't know her personally, but I met her, and she went to like Switzerland or Sweden, I'm not sure, to get euthanized because she had a degenerative disease. And just before she dies, just before she goes to see the doctor, she signed all the paper and she records the last letter, and she's panicking, she's anxious, and she's like, I know I'm just gonna fall asleep, but I'm not gonna wake up. I'm gonna record a video on that actually. Yeah, it's a documentary. Yeah, I think they made a documentary on her, and I watched it. I shouldn't have it, kind of haunt me, but she tried to remain calm, but you could see that she was. All this to say, with that guy, I would drug his food, and when he's asleep, I would, inject him a little and finish it. Like, this is torture. Like, this man is tortured, and you might say no, by my standard he's tortured, by his standard he's happy. He's got his little life in jail, and he does his things, he has a job, and he can eat a chocolate bar, and he's happy. I know you're probably right, but there's nothing left of him. He's not even human anymore. Like, How do I sue them? Bro, it's been 10 years. Even if there wasn't a statute of limitation, I mean, and then he said snare someone. I wasn't snared. He's still convinced he's innocent. Please contact me as soon as you can, and thank you for giving me hope. This is cruel, Joseph, to do that to him. I mean, he's a pedo, I don't care, but to actually, it's actually something like, should you encourage someone in his delusion? Like saying like, you're right, bro, you're innocent, you were ensnared, you're gonna win. I was expecting, when I read this letter, I was expecting to be more laughing, but this is sad. This is someone who broke down. He had a breakdown, a mental breakdown. And it's fascinating to see 10 years later, he still writes that, and he's still saying that one day I'll be free. He never will, of course, but anyway, that's what I wanted to say about this letter. Jean-Pierre Wehry, I'm not going to make any more videos on him because, not because he's not fascinating, he is, but I see what he has become, and it's sad, but more than sad, it's also pretty damn scary, I must say. To see a human being, and again, he's a pedo, I don't care, but to see a human being this far gone, this insane, turned insane by prison, let's not lie. Prison made him more insane. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, he did, but this is scary to see a human so far gone. So thanks for watching.